nothing that can prevent you from adding 32-bit numbers. As long as you adhere to the rules of the carry, you take the carry from a byte and you feed it into the higher order byte and so on. As long as you do that, you can add multi-byte numbers. This is an example of adding a multi-byte number. Looks like we're talking about 4 bytes here, so we're loading a counter 4. We're calling it my count. Clearing the accumulator, load X with 813 address, load Y with 813, clear carry. Okay, this is how the addition is going to take place after setting the counters and the pointers. You see that there is something called a counter and a pointer. A pointer points to where the data is, and a counter counts the number of times you perform the addition process. It's like load accumulator A, 0 and X, add with carry 0 and Y, and store the result. X is an index register and it carries some address, and you have to so this is actually a pointer. It points to some memory location where you go grab this data. And so you add with carry accumulator A and you store A into Y. So so we're adding X and Y. X is a 16-bit and Y is a 16-bit, so there is a total of yeah, and then you decrement X, decrement Y, decrement my count, and branch if not equal to back, and you keep doing that. You keep decrementing the pointer, and remember that we started with a pointer located pointing at 813. When you decrement it, it's going to go 812, 811, 810 until you run out of pointing at the data. It's a simple and pretty straightforward. Binary coded decimal is an important issue because we use the digits from 0 to 9, and sometimes we need to use the data from 0 to 9. We don't want to use the hexadecimal representation. Sometimes we need to stick to the decimal. So it allows you to do that. And representing a binary coded decimal comes in two categories, depending on where you come from. There is unpacked and there is packed binary coded decimal. When we do unpacked binary coded decimal, the lower 4 bits represent the binary coded decimal number. So for instance, you could have an 8-bit byte, but only the lower 4 bits are occupied with the number. Let's say the number 9. And so on, or 5, or whatever. This is called unpacked because you're using like 50% of the space available to you. Whereas in the packed binary coded decimal, we utilize both nibbles, both the first 4 bits, the low 4 bits, and the high 4 bits. Each one is carrying a binary coded decimal number. That's called packed. So when we represent 59, we can represent it in 1 byte like this, 5 and 9. So there are some advantages for having packed binary coded decimal versus unpacked binary coded decimal, saving some space, but it of course comes at the expense of some overhead. There is always an overhead with processing data. As you go from unpacked to packed, you have to do sometimes some shifting operations and some adjustment to the result, as we will see very soon. So there is a price for it, you know, the achievement of the greatest numerical results. There is always a price we have to pay for it in terms of time or hardware. For example, there is a problem adding binary coded decimal. This is something very important here. There is a little problem when you add two binary coded decimal numbers because the outcome is not necessarily a binary coded decimal number. So that's why you need to do some correction. For example, suppose we're adding 17 and 28 hex. You know, these numbers, well, obviously, when you add them, you should get 45, right? Whether you do it binary coded decimal or you do it in hex, it amounts to the same result because the number is less than 9. All the numbers are less than 9 in all cases. So we should get 45. However, when we perform the addition in binary, adding these in binary, you're going to get this result. And so that's not 45. So that's why we need to add a correction. The correction is 6. There is a number that needs to be added to make a correction to the binary addition. So we add the numbers in binary and then we add 6 to the result in order to get 45. We should have gotten 45 from the beginning, but the problem is that from the beginning, we see the reason for this discrepancy is because you're adding binary coded decimals. You want to interpret them as binary coded decimal, but the addition process itself is done with a binary mentality. As you go from a binary mentality to a binary coded decimal mentality, or from a hexadecimal, because the binary goes hand in hand with the hexadecimal, the base is 16 for the hexadecimal, whereas the base for decimal is 10. The difference between 16 and 10 is, of course, 6. And that's where this correction factor comes into play. You have to add 6. Um so that's why we need to use something called decimal adjust accumulator. See? To correct the result, to get the result in a binary coded decimal format at the end. So we load the accumulator A with 47, we add it with 25, and we use the decimal adjust so that we can get 72. If we perform addition without the decimal adjust, we don't get the 72. Yeah. Let me see if I have some supplementary material that go with this part. I am pretty sure we have some supplementary material that explains this part in more detail. Yeah, here you go. Here it is. Let's see. Where is the rotate? Yeah, here you go.